everyone. I'm Josue Pasillas, and I'm a graduate from the class of 2017. I was a first generation student at Pitzer, and I was fortunate enough that I found a group of first generation students there that we were able to support each other. This will be a conversation a conversation that will flow freely, and we can bring up any topics we want, have questions among us. And I'm co-hosting this with Paolina Cuevas, who's here, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Paolina. I am recent Pitzer grad with the class of 2020. I majored in organizational studies with a focus in education. Pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm just excited to be here today to talk about our first gen experiences in this like open dialogue conversation. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else would like to introduce themselves.
Yeah, since we're a small group, we should all just introduce ourselves for now.
Hi, I'm Liliana. I'm just gonna apologize for the background noise. I have my son and he is watching TV. But I am Liliana. I graduated from Pitzer in 2009, first generation student as well. And I think just kind of echoing what Josue said, I think when I arrived on campus, I was able to, through the CLSA retreat, kind of, get a group of individuals that I was able to connect with throughout the 4 years, and then just professors and faculty that I was able to slowly find as a support system. I think were kind of what allowed me to succeed in my.
Thank you for joining us. And Bernard will give you the opportunity as well. Okay, he'll be here soon.
No problem.
I don't think I mentioned I graduated in the class of 2017, and something that I've noticed since I've been at Pitzer and graduating from Pitzer is that the support for first generation students has grown over the time at Pitzer. I know that I don't know 2009 what it was like with support wise, but when I was a student at Pitzer, first generation students organized, and there was actual support from the dean of faculty's office. A club was started for first generation students with actual funding from the student funds, and so that's something that I've been happy to see at Pitzer grow. And I know Paolina, you're more recent graduate. I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit more where Pitzer was at when you graduated with first generation support and resources.
Yeah, I remember my first year coming in and um, learning about like the mentor program and the first gen club, which was a big part of my entire like experience at Pitzer. I remember the club was still growing every year. It was different. It wasn't very like consistent with like programming and things like that, but it was such a large group. And I remember hearing from the upperclassmen of like, this is the biggest group we've had. There's so many of us. And it was also one of the first few years they started their mentorship program. So coming in, I had a first gen mentor that I got really close with. And then over the years being at Pitzer, it kind of grew to where we have like a first gen like space now, where we host meetings and events, and we ask different departments on campus to come and do like info sessions, workshops, things like that for whatever support that the current cohort or group of students that we have needs. We would facilitate that with the different faculty members on campus as well. So I want to say it's grown a lot. Even since graduating, it's still going and they still host events, even over the virtual space.
And Bernard, we'll give you the opportunity to introduce yourself since we did it.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Just wanted to check in. I'm one of the first men to be admitted and graduate from Pitzer. There were a few of us and 300 women, a little overwhelming, but it was a great experience. The social experiment continues. I have, since my graduation, been in various careers, from forensic psychology to being a peace officer and working with the state medical board, So I have a variety of background. I also had the wonderful pleasure of adopting, being a mutual adoptee of a Scripps student. We found each other in her undergraduate years. She needed a dad and I needed a daughter. So we had that wonderful experience. She is first gen. When she graduated in 2018, we had a celebration with her family from Guadalajara and from family in the United States. We've done a lot of traveling together since then. She's in her second year of medical school now. She's a Scripps grad. So that's a little bit about my story.
That's great. Thank you for sharing.
It's really great to meet one of the first men to be part of the Pitzer campus. I think we all kind of hear about that part of the Pitzer history, but we were all far out. So it's really nice to meet you and hear about your stories at Pitzer.
Thank you, Liliana. Yeah, it's been a wonderful journey. I bought a house from a Pomona student who graduated and never left. I love the serenity of Claremont and can't seem to get away from it, except to travel as the pandemic will allow. My daughter and her mom and I were just in Belize just in the last couple of weeks. So we've had more adventures together.
Liliana, do you want to share a bit about your experience as a first generation student at Pitzer? You're from the class 2009, you said?
Yeah, that's right. The first gen program wasn't around by the time I graduated. So I think a lot of just the first generation support came from CLSA and some of my professors that when I got on campus, there were a few things that I didn't necessarily know how to navigate, just as far as classes and kind of support that you could have if you needed it. So I think I just kind of through experiences identified those individuals that were able to help me. I did learn about the first gen program because I served on the alumni board from 2016 to 2018. So I know at that point they were trying to also become more engaged within the alumni community, first gens, and making that connection. And I think I'm not sure where it evolved to, but they were trying to create a mentor program that extended from alumni to the current students, like upperclassmen, that then would mentor an incoming first gen student. So I was really excited to see that this was a new category in the alumni weekend. And I think maybe post pandemic, hopefully when we're on campus, we might be able to see more individuals join, because I think that'd be a really great opportunity to just talk to other alumni and current students.
I'm reflecting a little bit on the ceremony that we had with my daughter in 2018 at Scripps, where they definitely incorporated first gen programming into their curriculum. So I thought that was very supportive for all the students. So I encourage Pitzer to pursue that vigorously.
Yeah, and then I was going to jump in and talk about what you're sharing, Liliana, about the first gen mentor program. I remember like going through the whole, like even applying to Pitzer, and that was a big decision for me in deciding, to go to Pitzer was their first gen mentor program, because I knew I would be connected with someone who could support me. And like enrolling for classes my first year, and like the system had crashed, and so I had to I was freaking out, like what do I do? And I had like a mentor who I could go to for support. That's how I also discovered my major and what I wanted to study, was through my mentor, and just building those connections, which is a really big part of like staying at Pitzer and finishing my degree. And it's nice to see that it's grown, and there are so many more mentors now who work with the first gen students coming in, where like now each mentor has like three or four mentees that they work with and meet regularly with. So yeah, that was a big part of my first gen experience at Pitzer, definitely.
I think you bring up a good point. I feel like a lot of bigger institutions UCLA, USC have very robust first generation programming available. So I think that that's something that Pitzer should also, kind of take into account. I know that there's been work happening kind of I know that there was a professor who was the one that initiated pretty much all the first gen programming. And there's been students, but I think that just growing that, I think that would also be a big factor for any new incoming classes. So just, I'm glad to be able to hear what's happening on campus and look forward to seeing where the programming will grow.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that Pitzer has been a lot more committed recently to first generation students and showing that support from the institution. I'm just curious, since I started at Pitzer, you kind of have your first group of friends through orientation. But after that, I call those like forced friends almost, because you put in a group that you didn't get to choose. But the friends that I naturally made after that were really all first generation students. And I think that happened because I was able to connect with them, had similar family stories, or came from different similar backgrounds. I'm curious to hear if you guys had the same experience as well, where you grew into these friendship clusters of first generation students.
I was lucky enough, one of my first year roommates, who I ended up being co-chair with the first gen club. We were both co-presidents. So I was lucky to meet her as my first year roommate, and then we roomed for a few more years after that. And we're still close to now, but I think that initial connection, we were also on the same orientation together. But it was through that initial connection that we both went to the first gen club meeting, and we met a bunch of other first gen students. So that student network of the club itself was a big piece in creating that space and building community amongst other first gen students who were part of other identity groups or other clubs on campus. It was a big intersection of people from different backgrounds, which was amazing.
Yeah, I think for me, I have the different subsets of friends. Like you said, those friends that during orientation you kind of initially met, or even the roommates you were initially assigned paired up with. I was fortunate, that I really enjoyed my roommates and we were friends. Yes, I'm sorry, that's my son. During our time there. But I think my first gen group of friends came from the CLSA retreat and my mentors. And then outside of that, I just, formed friendships with people within my major or interests. But overall, whether it's first gen or other interests, I think I made really good friends that I still, I'm in touch with, just because we were at Pitzer and, got to meet each other and continued in similar pathways or just the same interests. So I think I'm very fortunate in that sense.
Something hello. Something I noticed of first generation students among my friends was that there was the mixed identities within first generation students, and oftentimes we're involved with other affinity clubs. For example, myself, I was a first generation student, but also connected to the Latinx Student Union. I had other friends who were first gen students and were in mixed identity, which meant that they had all these. They were part of these different affinity groups that they felt supported by. So I think that's something common that you see in first generation students, at least at Pitzer.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to mention, I came to Pitzer in the 80s, and there was not a title of first gen, but I was the first in my family to go to college. But I'm local. So I think what maybe it's just my natural inclination, but also to help me feel like I, belonged and, could perform, as well as a lot of folks I could tell had been at private schools and boarding schools. My friend, I had my own friendship group that lived nearby from high school. And a lot of times one of my friends says to me, well, Jill, your college experience was really my college experience. She was a commuter student, so she never had that kind of experience. And so I think because I was so close to home and continued on a lot of my life from, off campus, it made it easier. But I definitely always think about the imposter syndrome, very real in my head, but not saying anything, and also thankfully enough positive feedback from faculty to make me feel like, I was up to what it took to be a good student. And I'll have to add the second piece. I came back to Pitzer and was a dean in the Dean of Students office from 2012 to 16. And through that time, we actually did work with, I worked with Roberta Espinosa, who, we both went to Upland High. When I worked at Pomona, she was a student there, and then we both end up at Pitzer. She's a professor and I'm in the dean's office. And so we did do workshops quite often with faculty to understand things that won't get asked, and how they can, really reach out to students more. And her research was really the basis of all that kind of work that we did.
Her research about pivotal moments, right?
Well, and social collateral and mentorship. Yes, yeah, exactly.
And Roberta's not at Pitzer anymore, right? She's at LMU.
Yes, she's at Loyola Marymount, and my son went there the first year of his college last year, and she recognized him in the elevator and said hi to him, which I thought was really wonderful that, professor recognized my son from, mutual Facebook friend people, Maria Melendrez. So yeah, they're both there at LMU. So yeah, and Tom Poon. So we lost some really great people.
So now that she's at LMU, is there another faculty member that is supporting kind of the first gen programming, or how is that evolving?
Josue, haven't you worked with Mita Banerjee? Or I'm not sure. I don't know if it is slightly different, how they oversee the program. Do you know?
I think maybe Paolina can answer that better than
Okay.
me. I'm not sure if you want to take that.
Yeah. I want to say Roberta left my sophomore year. So for my last 2 years, it was kind of an interim of 2 faculty members where it was Mita Banerjee and the faculty member who oversees the Asian Pacific.
Linda Lamb, or
Linda Lamb.
yeah, she's.
Mm-hmm. It was between both of them to kind of oversee the first gen program.
That's right. Yeah. And she is still there, and so I'm sure she is still active with the group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Paolina, sorry for asking you so many questions, but you're more recent, so I think that you have a more recent perspective of what's going on at Pitzer. But with my senior year, I know the first gen students were organizing to have a room on campus that was dedicated for first gen students. Does that room still exist, and how is it used?
Yeah. The president before me, she did a majority of the heavy lifting, a lot of the work of securing a first gen space. So there is like an official first gen room on campus in Mead Hall. And so we got to paint, renovate it to be like a space, because before that we would request to use one of the living rooms and one of the dorm buildings. And so we would just regularly request that room. That's where we would meet up, or it would just constantly change. So there wasn't like a solidified space for first gen students to meet up until we got to secure this space in Mead Hall for us. And yeah, now it's furnished with desks, couches, a TV, space for us to meet up. It's a space for first gen students to come in and study, to collaborate, work on projects. The different identity groups on campus, or affinity groups, also meet in that space as well, because it's so centralized on campus. But yeah, it's still used to this day for first gen students to meet up. The club hosts its regularly schedule meetings there every week as well to check in, to talk about, what's happening on campus, if anyone has updates. So yeah, it's still used, it's still there. It was a really big achievement for the first gen community on campus. Everyone was super excited afterwards because we felt, we had this space where we can meet and feel comfortable and get to know one another. Yeah.
Paolina, I wanted to ask you a question, comes to mind about some families that I also support with my business partner. His brothers, he and I bought a ranch in Chino, and his brothers live on the ranch. One of the children is going to be graduating from high school, and she's considering entering college and is a little bit lost in the first gen. Certainly no one else in the family has been attending college. So I was wondering if you would be willing to reach out to her at some point and see if she's receptive to your experience at Pitzer.
Yeah, I would love to. And that's funny you say. My family also lives in Chino. I'm back home. So yeah, I'm also in Chino as well. So we could exchange, contact information. But yeah, I would love to reach out and connect with her and just talk about my Pitzer experience and see what kind of questions that she has.
Yeah, I'd love to get you connected with her. That would be great.
I will drop my email in the chat.
Liliana and Bernard, do you often go to the alumni weekends on campus?
I have in the past participated prior to the pandemic. And I don't know how many I've been to. I've been to a few board meetings, never been on the board, but always look forward to that. In the spring, of course, with the pandemic, we've been very limited to what we can do.
Yeah, same here. I moved to San Diego for grad school after Pitzer, and then I ended up coming back to LA 2012, I want to say, but I think I started going back to campus and alumni weekend maybe around 2014, and then was consistently going up until 2019 because I had my son right right before alumni weekend, and then the pandemic hit. So hopefully next year we'd be able to go back on campus.
Yeah, certainly I enjoy on campus. Alumni weekend's way better than this virtually. We were planning, so I'm currently on the alumni board, and we were planning on having this like an actual social or panel on campus. That would have been a lot better because then we would have had students there too, to network with first generation alumni. And that's something that we wanted to focus on, just to have build that bridge between the alumni and students. But if anyone else has anything to say, just bring it up. If not, it is a small group, so I think we could also end it early.
Well, I just, I think as the world goes forward and, comes to terms with its love-hate relationship with Zoom, that there might be a first gen type of thing that could happen with current students and alumni, in person and via digital, just in what you're talking about, somebody getting like what Lena offering for Bernard's friend, just to get some talk. So I don't know if that Pitzer Connect, that's, that our office and career services are building, but there, I would imagine there'll be a first gen affinity group in that networking. So there's a lot of potential, it seems, in just what's happened this year as far as taking some of the good from it.
Well, thank you for joining this social. We hope to see you all on campus for alumni weekends in the future, and who knows when that'll be. But I am looking forward to that. Being on campus, talking to students. That's always one of the best parts. Just learning about what campus is like now and seeing what students are engaged with, what movements are going on, because there always is a movement going on, and thank you, Paolina, for giving us that recent perspective of campus. I don't know if you want to end it with something.
Um, yeah, I also look forward to being able to attend an in-person event to network with more PZ alum. I'm always looking for ways to stay connected to Pitzer, even though it's been such a short time that I've been away from campus, but any opportunity, I'll definitely come back. But it was nice to meet everyone and to hear everyone's different stories about their experiences being first gen at Pitzer as well. And it just inspires me to continue doing the work I do.
Great to meet everyone too.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.